Aloha, welcome to our Committee on Water and Land hearing. Today is February 13th, 2024. We're on our 10:30 a.m. agenda in conference room 430 at the State Capitol. If you are testifying by Zoom, please don't use a copyrighted or trademarked image as your background and keep your camera and mics off until your time to testify. Okay, we'll get started on our first item, HB 2618 HD1, relating to aquaculture, Department of Ag.
Good morning, Chair and Vice Chair. The department stands in support of this bill and will be here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Office of Hawaiian Affairs.
Aloha mai kako, Chair Ichiyama, Vice Chair Poi Poi. My name is Kaylee Nixon. I am a public policy advocate with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, and we will stand on our written testimony. Mahalo.
Thank you. Hawaii Farm Bureau. Okay. Okay, Hawaii Farm Bureau. Okay, that's all signed up to testify. Anyone else wishing to provide testimony? Okay, seeing none. Member questions? Okay, no questions. We'll move on to HB 2001 HD1 relating to restorative aquaculture and Department of Ag.
Good morning again. Dexter Kishida, Deputy Department of Agriculture. We stand on our testimony in support and do see this as a definite area of aquaculture that we would love to expand into. Thank you.
Thank you. Kua aina ulu awamo on Zoom.
Aloha mai kako. Olane Momi Fisher with KUA. We stand on our testimony in strong support. Thank you.
Thank you. Hulu Mamo Hawaiian Civic Club.
Aloha, Keone Shizuma representing Hulu Mamo Hawaiian Civic Club. Stand in support, but we'll stand on our written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Hawaii Farm Bureau. Okay, that's all signed up to testify. Anyone else wishing to provide testimony? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions? Okay, no questions. We'll move on to HB 2146 HD1 relating to agricultural tourism, Department of Ag.
Thank you very much. Dexter Kishida, Deputy Department of Agriculture. We stand on our testimony offering comments. Specifically would like to point out, though, some concern in repealing existing county authorities that are within the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Hawaii Tourism Authority.
Aloha, just in time. Ilihia Johnson for the Hawaii Tourism Authority. Good to see you guys again. Sorry, I took the stairs. We stand on our written in support of this. You know, the visitor industry, there's so much spending that could be going directly to our ag producers. So many ways we can support them. It's one of those great ways that tourism can help drive diversification, not be the opposite of it. So we're in strong support of this. Stand by for questions. Mahalo.
Thank you. Hawaii Farm Bureau. Okay, that's all signed up to testify. Anyone else wishing to provide testimony?
Good morning, Katia Balaciano with the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. I'm sorry, but we are submitting late testimony, which is, I believe, being distributed now. We do have some concerns regarding this bill. OPSD supports agricultural tourism as a means by which farmers can diversify their income and help sustain their primary agricultural operations. And we do believe it should be an option that should be available to all counties. However, the choice to establish ordinances to permit agricultural tourism and overnight accommodations should be left with the counties and not governed by rules created by the Land Use Commission. This is especially true since the counties can best enforce agricultural tourism requirements and the LUC doesn't really have an enforcement arm. Furthermore, amending Chapter 343 would be necessary to allow the counties to require an environmental review before authorizing agricultural tourism activities. Finally, if the bill does advance, we recommend combining into one section the two terms agricultural tourism and agricultural tourism activities. We think one term would be simpler. So thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to provide testimony? Okay, seeing none, members' questions? Okay, no questions. We'll move on to HB 2089 relating to the State Building Code, Hawaii State Energy Office.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, Howard Wigg, Hawaii State Energy Office. We have comments on this bill and would be happy to field any questions.
Okay, thank you. Blue Planet Foundation.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Jody Robinson from Blue Planet Foundation. We are opposing this measure. This measure would substantially increase the time allowed for the adoption of our state building codes. It would move the timeline actually to 8 years for the counties to adopt the codes. State building codes are really important to protect public health and safety, to ensure a good quality of life for our residents, and more importantly for Blue Planet, we're really concerned about the energy code. Energy codes that require energy savings, energy efficiency, and home weatherization updates, which are critical if we are going to address climate change impacts in our community. I've kind of outlined the process for state code adoption in our testimony, and one example I wanted to highlight for the committee, a negative impact of our state perpetually being delayed in the adoption of this code is our ineligibility to receive FEMA funding. So the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency applied for FEMA funding that would be used for the Building Resilient Infrastructures and Communities grant program. This is a big, large federal grant program that we essentially were ineligible for because of our delayed building codes. So we really oppose this measure to further delay that code process in the committee. And I wanted to highlight it here for Water and Land because I know you folks are really taking the lead on some of the wildfire recovery and response and figuring about how we can prevent these natural disasters from happening in the future. So federal funding is going to be critical for that. And if we have delayed codes, we're ineligible for millions of dollars that are available to help our state be more resilient in light of climate impacts. So for those reasons, we oppose this measure. Thank you.
Thank you. BIA Hawaii on Zoom.
Aloha, Greg Thielen, volunteer chair of the BIA Codes Committee. You have our written testimony, but one of the things I really wanted to share with you today is there's sort of a misguided image of the building code being this thing that a building inspector carries around in his pocket. This is our building code. I don't know if it all fits on the camera. I can back up if you need me to. Every 3 years, these books are being rewritten, being republished, and resold to all the different government agencies, design professionals, and contractors. The only people that dictate a 3-year term are the very people that write these books. We literally have the fox guarding the henhouse. While this is in our testimony, I also want to address the FEMA issue. We have gotten written verification from Congressman Case and his office that FEMA considers either of the two most current codes when considering BRIC grant applications. FEMA money for emergency disaster is never in jeopardy because of building codes. It is just BRIC grants. And it is not even a requirement that you have one of the most two current codes to apply for a BRIC grant. It's merely one of many scoring criterion when you apply. So the idea that we are ineligible for FEMA grants is completely a red herring. Beyond that, we'll stand on our written testimony, and I'm available to answer any questions if you like.
Thank you. Next is Ashray Jacob Carson on Zoom.
There we go. I had to unmute myself. Hello, my name is Jacob Carson. I'm the Associate Manager of Government Advocacy and Outreach for Ashray. ASHRAE is the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers. We are a 53,000 member strong professional society made up of the engineers who build, who work on building systems, who work on energy efficiency, indoor air quality, resiliency, and sustainability. We also write many of the building standards that Hawaii uses. On behalf of our 250 ASHRAE members in Hawaii, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. We oppose House Bill 2089. We stand on our written testimony, but I wish to emphasize a few points. This legislation, though well-intentioned, would, as others have said, see the time between code update cycles in Hawaii increase radically. The stated intent behind this is to reduce housing costs. However, the underpinning idea that Hawaii's adoption of modern energy efficiency codes and standards is in some way or any way responsible for high housing costs, and that ceasing to adopt up-to-date energy codes and standards would bring down housing costs is, in our view, incorrect. The International Energy Conservation Code, which is for residential, and the Commercial Energy Standard created by ASHRAE members that Hawaii adopts, which is called ASHRAE Standard 90.1. These are both published on a 3-year cycle. There are predictable science-based outcomes that will occur if Hawaii chooses to skip over every other edition of the energy standard. Namely, not updating the energy standard will leave massive energy efficiency gains on the table. This will in turn cause business owners, homeowners, and tenants to pay higher utility bills, while also failing to mitigate the release of thousands of tons of greenhouse gas emissions per year. This will in turn cause greater difficulty meeting the state's 2030 and 2045 climate targets, jeopardize Hawaii's access to certain federal funding opportunities. I would mention that it's not just FEMA BRIC grants, there's also money in the IRA that can only be accessed by having the most up-to-date energy codes, and also cause Hawaii to miss out on job creation associated with energy code adoption. To conclude, there are some brass tacks numbers that I want to emphasize. Updating Hawaii's commercial and residential energy standard will mitigate the release of over 8,000 metric tons of CO2 in the first year alone. In turn, this will save homeowners, business owners, and tenants over $3 million that year. And when a 30-year timeline is considered, that longer timeline reflects the long life of a structure. That savings will balloon to over $1 billion. Perhaps most crucially, according to the U.S. Department of Energy and the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, updating an up-to-date commercial energy standard is expected to bring down the average construction costs. This is because there are cost savings from LED lighting, and because the up-to-date standard mandates better insulation for buildings, which in turn allows for the use of smaller, cheaper, more efficient HVAC systems. On the residential side, updating to the newest energy standard would have a cost associated with it. It would increase the cost of the average down payment by $288. The homeowner would then be expected to save over $800 per year in their utility bills, so they would be cash flow positive almost immediately. Simply put, we oppose this legislation because updating building energy standards is not, in our view, the primary driver of high construction costs, and because failing to update to modern standards comes at a huge cost in terms of economic and environmental impact. I'd like to thank the committee for your time. That concludes my testimony, and I am, of course, happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Next is NIAP Hawaii chapter. Okay. Sierra Club of Hawaii.
Morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Wayne Tanaka with Sierra Club of Hawaii. We are in opposition to this measure for the many of the reasons that have been articulated by prior testifiers. I did want to point out that there are a number of other jurisdictions that are watching us and what we do with this measure. And there's a lot of concern on the national level that if Hawaii passes something like this, then we were just going to be copied by many other jurisdictions, and that basically would transform our reputation as a climate leader into a cautionary tale. I did also want to highlight that the purported purpose behind or justification for this measure is because of building permit review delays, and I think Civil Beat did an excellent job in uncovering some of the actual causes of those issues, which is primarily issues regarding staff hiring and retention, and training, and management issues and salary issues. And I think those, if we really want to get to the root cause of these delays, we really need to look at those actual those actual direct issues rather than trying to shortcut our way to marginally reducing initial housing costs at the expense of residents' finances, their health, their safety, and our climate resiliency. So for all those reasons, we respectfully ask that the committee hold this measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandy Wong.
Yes, I'm here on behalf of the American Council of Engineering Companies, who has submitted written testimony. We'll stand on our written testimony in support. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all signed up. Is there anyone else wishing to testify?
Josh Wish for Holden Lewis Collaborative. We submitted testimony a little late, but we'll stand on our testimony in support. If you don't have it, I can get it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anyone else? Okay, seeing none. Members, questions? Okay, no questions. Moving on to HB 2505 relating to land use. DLNR.
Aloha mai kako, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Michael Walker, and I serve as the statewide fire protection forester for DLNR, Division of Forestry and Wildlife. We stand on our written testimony in strong support of HB 2505, and I'm available for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Okay. Department of Ag.
Dexter Kishida, Deputy at Department of Agriculture. We stand on our testimony with comments. There are a few things that we'd like to point out. One, there may be some unintended consequences to housing and farm dwellings or employee housing with this bill. Also, it'd be great to get a better understanding, because we don't know of any real issues that have arisen that this bill would solve. So we also defer to our counties who do much of the enforcement around this. Thank you.
Thank you. Hawaii Farm Bureau. Okay, not present. Is there anyone else wishing to testify? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions? Okay, no questions. We'll move on to HB 1628. Relating to taxation, Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation. Okay, Department of Taxation.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Clinton Piper, Department of Taxation. We'll stand on our written comments, but be available for questions if you have.
Thank you. Tax Foundation of Hawaii on Zoom.
Yes, good morning. This is Jade McMillan on behalf of Tom Yamachika for the Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We've submitted some comments on the measure. We will stand on our written comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Hawaii Appleseed.
Arjuna Haim with Hawaii Appleseed. We stand in support and request a couple amendments, specifically increasing the transfer time of controlled interest from 12 to 36 months, exempting affordable housing development projects, and allowing for current conveyance tax rates to apply. But stand in support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's all signed up. Anyone else wishing to testify?
Good morning again. Katia Balasiano for the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. We apologize for our late testimony. I believe you have copies of it in front of you. We are in support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Okay, seeing none. Members, questions? No questions. We'll move on to HB 2143 relating to beach park restoration, DLNR.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair. Michael Kane, Office of Conservation and Coastal Lands. On behalf of DLNR, we support this bill. And if I can add a quick comment, our office has been involved in trying to build these bridges between nonprofits and the state government to help better steward our land. So this is the type of projects that we want to be involved in, and that we think provide a good way forward for a lot of communities that are facing threats from climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. The Kohala Center. Okay, anyone else wishing to testify? HB 2143. Okay, seeing none. Members, questions? No questions. That's the end of our agenda, so we will recess for decision-making. Aloha, we're back from our recess for decision-making on our 10:30 a.m. agenda. We'll start with HB 2618, HD1, relating to aquaculture. Recommendation is to pass as is. Members, any discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion, chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 2618, House Draft 1, recommendation is to pass as is, noting Rep. Hashem excused. Are there any reservations or noes? Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Chair and members. Next is House Bill 2001, HD1, relating to restorative aquaculture. Recommendation on this one is to pass as is. Any discussion? Okay, no discussion. Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 2001, House Draft 1, recommendation to pass as is, noting Rep. Hashem excused. Any reservations or noes? Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 2146, relating to agricultural tourism. We're going to make a few amendments. We're going to take the Hawaii Farm Bureau recommended amendment from their testimony and the OPSD amendments in their testimony as well. Members, any discussion? Okay, chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 2146, House Draft 1, recommendation to pass with amendments, noting Rep. Hashem excused. Are there any reservations or noes? Seeing none, recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. HB 2089.
Okay, members, sorry, this one's a little bit long, so please bear with me. Recommendation is going to be to pass out a House Draft 1. We are going to defect the date to the year 3000. Taking into consideration the concerns from the testifiers about energy conservation, we are going to make this proposed change only apply to the International Building Code and the International Residential Code. So only those two codes will allow to be adopted. Every other version, we are not going to allow that to happen for the State Energy Conservation Code, which I think will address much of the concerns in the testimony. We're also going to add a new section to this bill amending HRS 107-28 subsection B, which currently provides that if the county does not amend their code within the 2-year time frame, the state code will be the interim code until superseded by adoption of an amended version of the state building code or standards by the county pursuant to this section. So the last part is the new language for 107-28 subsection B and tech amendments. Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll take the vote. Voting on House Bill 2089, recommendation is to pass with amendments noting Rep. Hashem excused. Any reservations? Reservations, Rep. Gagnon. Okay, no other reservations or no's. Recommendation is adopted. Thank you, members.
Okay, moving on to House Bill 2505 relating to land use. Recommendation is to defect the date, and that's the recommendation. Any discussion? Okay, chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 2505, recommendation to pass with amendments noting Rep. Hashem excused. Any reservations or no's? Okay, recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Next is House Bill 1628. I think there's support for this topic, but I think the intent is to take it back and work on it over the next year and hopefully come back with something a little that can kind of reflect some of the concerns brought up in testimony. So we're going to defer this one and work on it. Next is HB 2143 relating to beach park restoration. Recommendation is to defect the date. Members, any discussion? Okay, seeing none, chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 2143, recommendation is to pass with amendments noting Rep. Hashem excused. Any reservations or no's? Okay, recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members, and we are adjourned.